It's, blessings upon all of our heads. The reading is from Valerie Carr. I think she wrote a book called See No Stranger. And I wanted to just read this. It's about forgiveness, and it felt appropriate. Reconciliation, atonement, forgiveness are some of the themes of this holiday in the Jewish tradition, the high holy days of the Jewish tradition. And she writes, forgiveness is not forgetting. Forgiveness is freedom from hate. 2 days after 9 black people were massacred by a white supremacist in a historic black church in Charleston in June of 2015, their family members showed up at this bond hearing, looking into his eyes and said, "I forgive you." I felt sick to my stomach. This man did not deserve their forgiveness. I worried that saying these words too quickly cut short our right to express our divine rage, publicly and internally. Yet these family members chose to forgive as a declaration of their own autonomy. Yet these family members chose to forgive as a declaration of their own autonomy. As if to say, no matter what you do to us, we will not allow you to make us hate you. I thought about my own community's choice to pray for the gunmen after the mass shooting of Sikhs in Oak Creek, Wisconsin. Forgiveness was not a substitute for justice. It had energized us in the fight for justice. It reframed justice not as retribution, but as cultural and institutional transformation. I am entering my second year with you. We've just passed a year of ministry together, half-time, and my name is Roger Butts. We've known each other the last year, and many of us have gone through ups and downs and ins and outs, and we are still here. Still with the possibility of doing ministry together in new ways, fresh air, fresh resolve, new visions, new missions. And because you've known me a little bit, you know that I come from a small town in Illinois. And if you don't know me, I come from a small town in Illinois. Galesburg. My high school had students who were African American, some of Mexican descent, and because of our particular time, some from Vietnam. You know, they had just come over from Vietnam. And there were Lutherans and Baptists and atheists and Methodists, a bunch of Catholics, and so many Lutherans. And to my knowledge, one Jewish person in my whole high school, Charlie. Charlie and I played on the tennis team together. I went to a church, a big Baptist church, nice folks. They weren't sure about the Lutherans, but they sure enough didn't like the Catholics. And while they loved Israel, they didn't much have hope for Jewish folks. As a college student, when I discovered Unitarian Universalism and never looked back, all of that was so confusing and disorienting. Back in high school, I did not ask Lutherans about their theology of the cross or Catholics about transubstantiation. And neither did I ask Charlie about his Jewish beliefs. I wish I had. I wish I had been able to have Sabbath meal with them. I think my folks would have let me go. I think they would have. They're pretty hands-off about other people's religions. Never came up. Now, here is where I confess. I am so embarrassed and so ashamed. I asked Charlie one time, why are Jewish people always rich? Oh, Roger. I cringe. But here was a beautiful moment. He didn't shame me. He didn't shut down the conversation. He didn't tell me to go away. He said, Roger, I'm glad you asked. He said, Roger, I'm glad you asked. I'm sure he wanted to take his tennis racket and knock my knees, but he said, I'm glad you asked. Of course, not all Jewish people are rich. It's a stereotype that people have used for thousands of years to make other people hate Jewish people. We're not all rich. And it is the source of so much pain and suffering. And I was listening. Put that out of your mind, he said. I'm glad I asked, because how else would you know it's not true? I don't want you to think it's true, and I don't want you to say it again, and I want you to know why people say that. I heard him, and I quickly changed the conversation to something about Pink Floyd or the tennis match we were about to play or whatever it was. I told him I'm sorry, and that was that. This is the holiest time in the Jewish calendar, the high holy days, the period between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. In those days growing up, obviously, I did not know about Rosh Hashanah. Obviously, I did not know about Yom Kippur. I didn't know that Rosh Hashanah was the new year, that it marked the creation of the world. I didn't know about apple and honey. I didn't know about any of it. I didn't know that the book of life was opened by God and 10 days later closed up, and God would know who by fire and who by water and so on and so forth. The days of awe. The days of awe. Let's just pause there for a moment. Take a moment and think of the days of awe in your own life. When did you feel that liminal space between the heavens and the earth? When did you see the beauty and the bruise of this old world and this life? Do you have a picture in your mind of those days of awe? Have you told your kids and your kids' kids? Have you told your friends where you were and what it taught you? May each of you have many such stories to tell your beloveds. I did not know that you could take bread down to the river and cast it into the river. All your regrets, all your sins, let it just be carried away. But I'm sure enough going to try it next year. I read about that in the New York Times the other day. I did not know about Yom Kippur, the Sabbath of Sabbath, the holiest of days. I did not know this was a time of fasting, of going to temple for services, and apparently services that are not quick. They do not rush. I did not know that this was a day when you could go to your friend that you wronged and ask forgiveness and seek reconciliation. That you could go to your family, your business partners, and fess up. Or as one secular Jew put it the other day, I go to my friends, I go to my spouse, I talk to them, and I go to the temple and confess there too that I haven't been there in a whole year. There's a sense that one of the story that drives the atonement part of this is the time when Moses is gone from the people shortly after the Exodus from slavery in Egypt. And Moses has been gone a long time, and the people are getting antsy, and they ask Aaron to build a golden calf. And he does, and Moses come back and like, what is this? What in the world is happening? And God is going to smite them and start over with a new people and a new covenant. And Moses goes to God and said, look, why would you do such a thing to such a newly liberated people? We can start again. We can start anew. Give us another chance. And so it goes. We start again in love. Yom Kippur, I've read, is like imagining that the last year you've been climbing a hill, and on this day you're able to get to the summit and look back. What did I encounter this year? What did that teach me? What did I overcome this year? What did it teach me? Where did I stumble? Where did I lose my way? And what have I learned? And what shall I take into the new year? It's a time of introspection, deep and abiding introspection, fasting, prayer, deep self-awareness. It's a time of reconciliation. You take one step towards forgiveness. You go inside to the most vulnerable place inside you, to the place known only to you and your conscience, and you wrap that part of yourself in a big hug and say, I forgive you. I forgive that part of me that was a teenager, went and asked a really stupid question of my Jewish friend. I forgive others that have wronged me. And as our reading said today, it's not forgiveness that asks me to forget, but forgiveness that asks me to be transformed on the journey towards wholeness. Transformative forgiveness. And finally, it's a time for seeking justice. It's hard right now, with a war blazing, with climate injustice, income inequality, human trafficking, the incarceration, mass incarceration of our brown and black siblings, the decline of democracy around the world, creeping authoritarianism. We can only do our little bit, but we can do our little bit. On Yom Kippur, the high priest goes into the Holy of Holies in the temple and says prayers and so on. We in our tradition do not have a high priest. We do not have a Holy of Holies in the temple. Although last week somebody at All Souls suggested that maybe the coffee pot is the closest we could. But that's not so bad. But each one of us has a high priest inside of us, a deep and abiding conscience, our truest, deepest selves. And each of us has a Holy of Holies, that place where we are brutally honest and brutally compassionate with ourselves, where we can see ourselves honestly and directly in the way that the Spirit of life sees us. This is our time of going there. Introspection, reconciliation, justice seeking. In love, we begin again. The one area that captured my deepest attention is the idea that God opens the book of life on the first day, and God closes the book of life on the 10th day, and in between there are days of awe. And somehow, in this process, we are to remember how fragile life is, how precious, and that at any point we might find our life coming to an end. And it may be by fire, and it may be by water, and it may be while we sleep, and it may be while we're awake. We do not know. Who will be with us next year? Who will be away from us next year? Cling to them. Cling to them. Love them. Tell them again and again and again that you love them. The whole of it, the whole of it, the whole poetic idea is to embrace life in its messiness and its beauty. Who by avalanche? Who in these realms of love? Who by accident? Who in solitude? We do not know. So let us embrace this life and live it fully.